Corey, you say that teachers' unions are substantially to blame for public schools staying closed during the pandemic. Why do you say that?
Absolutely. There are 6 rigorous studies on the topic. I did the first one with a co-author named Christos Makrides. And each of these studies found that places that had stronger teachers unions, all else equal, were substantially and statistically less likely to reopen their schools in person. And the reason for this is pretty obvious to me. I don't blame the people in the system. I blame the incentives that are baked into the system itself. Think about it. The private schools were fighting to reopen from the get-go, but you had the public school teachers unions fighting to remain closed. And the main difference there is one of incentives, that one of those sectors receives children's education dollars regardless of whether they even open their doors for business. But it was actually even worse than that with the COVID school closures, because the teachers unions started to understand that they could actually hold children's education hostage, essentially in perpetuity, to secure multiple multi-billion-dollar ransom payments from the federal government. And it actually worked out for them. There's about $190 billion in so-called COVID relief that have been allocated to K-12 education since March of 2020. That's about $3,000 to $4,000 per student, on top of what the government-run schools are already spending of about $16,000 per student per year. Most of that money hasn't even been spent yet. According to the Wall Street Journal, 93% of that funding to this day hasn't even been spent. So the public school teachers unions, I don't blame the people in the system, but they did have an incentive to keep their doors closed to secure these ransom payments. In Chicago, 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 years to flatten a generation of children. You had a Chicago teachers union strike vote in 2022. They were still fear-mongering about reopening schools. The same union had to delete a tweet saying that the push to reopen schools is rooted in racism, sexism, and misogyny. You had the same teachers union ridiculed because a board member was vacationing in Puerto Rico in person while railing against going back to work in person.